The new Samsung Galaxy S23 Series is here and is everything that you need to know.
Just like the S22 series, we have the S23, the S23 Plus, and the S23 Ultra. The two smaller S23s have been brought up to date to fully match in terms of that camera wraparound design that we had before. Just like before, regardless of which S23 device you decide to go for, you'll be getting the same processor performance in that Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor. When it comes to the sizes, the S23 has a 6.1-inch flat display and the S23 Plus has a bigger 6.6-inch flat display. On the back of the S23, the smaller siblings, you get the same triple camera setup, but you don't get that 100 times space zoom that you get on the S23 Ultra. You get that limited 30 times space zoom, which is still pretty good. What's more exciting for me though is that S23 Ultra. Let's start with the design. At a glance, the new S23 Ultra looks very similar to the current S22 Ultra, but after a closer examination, you quickly realize a thing or two. For example, the mic hole at the top looks a little bit different, the antenna band has been moved, and also it's not as rounded as the S22 Ultra, and the sides are slightly flatter than before. Other than that, it hasn't changed much as far as the design goes. On the front, we still have that camera placement right at the front, so a little hole punch right at the top. We have a new Corning Gorilla Glass Victus 2, which should, in theory, make the glass stronger and more scratch resistant. We still have the S Pen placed right to the bottom with all the cool features from writing on the screen and using it as a camera shutter. You have the speaker grills there, SIM card tray, all still in the same places. The S23 Ultra has a nice heft to it, which I really like. It comes in at around 233 grams, and with its larger display and size, it's definitely not going to be a device for everyone. But if you prefer something smaller with the same experience minus the S Pen, then you should definitely take a look at the standard S23 and the S23 Plus. Manufacturer seems to think we all need that extremely large display now, hence the inception of foldable devices, but the S23 Ultra commands a pro-level performance that needs that extra real estate for running dual applications or writing notes or signing documents on the go for business individuals, for example. The S23 Ultra comes in phantom black, cream color, green and lavender. I think I really like that green color. Let's talk more about this gorgeous display on the S23 Ultra. It's a WQHD Plus display giving you 500 ppi that is sharp, vibrant and just excellent in various viewing angles. So even if you use it in direct sunlight situation, for example, the high brightness level will keep you going and you're good to go. You can crank it up as bright as you want it. This could be the brightest display out right now, if not the best. You have an adaptive brightness settings if you prefer, and you can also adjust the color profile to suit your taste. And for the gamers out there, you have a 120Hz refresh display that can be dialed down to 60Hz in the display settings. But whatever you do, the S23 Ultra can go from 1 to 120Hz. So when the oomph is not needed, it can be dialed straight back down to save battery life. It also supports HDR10+, so when you have a compatible content on Netflix or something, you can enjoy visuals, and combine that with Dolby Atmos, you have a really good immersive experience. Before we get into the camera features, which we'll be comparing to the Pixel 7 Pro and the iPhone 14 Pro Max in the future, which by the way, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that one. Samsung have opted to give us the latest Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 in Europe. Well, in the UK, this makes me really happy because we get the same level of experience as our US counterparts. Samsung also said this is not just your normal 8 Gen 2 processor, it's designed for the S23 Ultra for that extra gaming oomph, meaning you get the performance for longer when gaming and not just in random bursts. So things like your frame rate, you'll be getting that for longer. The powerful processor also means less lag and smoother user experience when playing games and browsing the web, but it's not just that. You can also comfortably run multiple applications at the same time because you also get 12GB of LPDDR5 RAM in there. Besides running multiple applications, it also enables you to open apps very quickly. So for example, if you see something going on around you, you can quickly launch that camera app and take that picture and never miss any moments. The S23 series, they come loaded with Android 13 and One UI 5.1, offering a wealth of features that makes your life a bit easier. So you get things like phone link, quick share and more. The device itself is not bloated, so you get the usual preloaded Google apps, but you can fully customize various aspects to make it your own. In addition, you get things like Advanced Vision Booster, which adjusts color tones and contrast at different lightens, and Enhanced Comfort Display for your eyes. And you also get this new routine function to help you focus better, so when you go to bed, you can put it in bedtime mode, for example. For storage, you're looking at up to 1TB of storage, and for connectivity, we get Wi-Fi 6E, ultra-wideband connection on the S23 Plus and Ultra models. Battery capacity has also been improved on the smaller siblings, but the S23 Ultra will give you 5000 mAh battery The standard S23 has gone up to 3,900 mAh battery, and the S23 Plus has gone up to 4,700 mAh battery. The Ultra will support 45-watt faster charging compared to the other ones. Okay, onto the camera. The S23 Ultra has a new quad camera setup, so it's featuring a new main adaptive pixel 200 megapixel sensor, combining 16 pixels into one larger pixel. This offers brighter, more detailed pictures in low light. It has f1.7 aperture, 23mm focal length, you have OIS, 85 degrees field of view, and then you have a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle camera at f2.2 with 12mm focal length with 120 degrees field of view, and a 10 megapixel telephoto lens at f2.4. This one gives you 69mm focal length. It also has OIS, gives you 36 degrees field of view, and you have another 10 megapixel 2x tele with f4.9 aperture. It goes further away, so it gives you 230mm focal length. You have OIS in there as well and 11 degrees field of view. The S23 Ultra can give you 10 times optical zoom, but you can also achieve 100 times space zoom. You can zoom into things from the distance and still make out what a picture is after the software does its enhancements. This is pretty cool, you can see it in action here. For selfies, there's a new 12 megapixel shooter up from 10 megapixel with f2.2 aperture, 25mm focal length. It supports HDR10+, and 80 degrees field of view. The selfie camera also has Super HDR with 60 frames per second, offering more dynamic range. When shooting video, there's something new here. You can now shoot 8K videos at 30 frames per second. You also have things like night portrait mode, which Samsung says would analyze distant subjects for bokeh effect. It would analyze the subject's hair and eye separately for sharper images. In video mode, you have adaptive VDIS, which would consider things like the light situation, the movements, and analyze them for better results, and 2 times wider OIS. There's noise reduction tech in there as well using AI, which will clean up your images, which is good. Autofocus is also looking really good. It has that new super quad pixel for autofocus, and here, each of that 200 million pixels are used. And to keep things stable, the camera would analyze left to right and top to bottom movement differences for more points of reference. Expert RAW app, which was introduced last year to give you more flexibility on your photography, has been improved as well. You now get uncompressed 50 megapixel RAW pictures up from 12 megapixel last year. In this mode as well, you can shoot things like new Astro hyperlapse, which gives you 300 times settings, and picture stacking, which is a bit like bracketing, so you have multiple exposure modes. In this mode, you can't shoot 50 megapixel though, so bear that in mind. The smaller siblings just lose that 200 megapixel sensor, so you only get that 50 megapixel ultra or super high resolution pictures, which isn't too bad. What else do we have here? It's still IP68 water and dust resistant. You have a super fast on-screen fingerprint reader. Face unlock still works really well, or you can just stick to good old pin and pattern unlock.
So that's everything you need to know about the new Samsung Galaxy S23 series. If you have any questions, drop them below. And if this is your first time around here, please do subscribe. And you'd want to know about the comparison that's coming up as well. So yes, make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.